Stuart Nash.
Thank you very much, Mr Speaker. I do stand to support this bill in its third reading, and I've given speeches on this in its first, second and committee stages, so there's not much new that I want to say. But what I would like to do, Mr Speaker, is sum up the points I have made, because I think they're all very important. And I come back to something that Melissa Lee has said, and her colleague Sam Lotteringham mentioned it as well, but I fundamentally disagree with it. They talk about the ability to legislate for risk, and I don't agree with that. I think that this bill is actually legislating for risk. Now, the reason I say that, and I talked about the fact that there is something called the risk-free rate of return. It's usually understood to mean US Treasury bills, because there is nothing safer to invest in than US Treasury bills. So anything with an interest rate higher than that carries an element of risk. Okay? But one risk that investors should not have to take into account is the risk of negligence or incompetence or very poor form on behalf of financial advisors. Now, when Melissa Lee said that people have to account for risk, she is right, but I would say that savers, the people who go to financial advisors, expect advice around different risk types. They don't know how to assess risk properly, so they go to financial advisors to ask how they can properly assess their risk and have a balanced portfolio. That is the role of the financial advisor. And I talked about how risk is in fact one of the fundamental, or the understanding of risk and the assessing of risk is one of the fundamental developments of the global economy. This is a bill that is supported by the industry, Mr Speaker, and there are reasons for that, and one of the fundamental reasons is because that the reputation and good name of a lot of very good financial advisors has come under attack in the last few years because of their unscrupulous colleagues, well not colleagues, of people operating in this industry carrying the name of a financial advisor. Now, this is an industry, Mr Speaker, that we encourage the good people to remain in, and we want people to enter this industry, but under the knowledge that they will be trained, they need to be registered, and they need to be able to have the education and offer the advice and the skills to be able to say to people who want to invest that this is how to do it. People go to financial advisors for advice. Now, and I remember hearing a case where someone talked about a balanced portfolio as an investment in 5 different finance companies. That is not a balanced portfolio. That is the sort of advice that was given out by these fly-by-night characters who had no education, no grounding, no experience in this game whatsoever. And it was an absolute travesty to the good people of New Zealand that we allowed these people into the sector. Now, with this bill and the previous 2 bills that were put up by the Honourable Leanne Dalzell, these sort of people will now no longer be able to operate in this industry. Now, we talked about financial literacy as well, and this is a very important point, and it transcends way beyond the boundaries of this bill, but it's incredibly important. And again, I'd like to come back to something that Sam Lotteringham mentioned. He said, and I almost quote, that a friend of his with financial qualifications finds it difficult wading through a 75-page prospectus. And I find that astounding but incredibly worrying. And my point on this is if someone with financial training has great difficulty wading through a 75-page prospectus, how is someone without any financial training supposed to understand the requirements? Now, it is law to put out a prospectus. It must be done if you are offering securities to the public, and everything in that prospectus has been deemed by Parliament to be absolutely necessary in order to make a sound financial decision. If people cannot understand a prospectus, they go to a financial advisor. A financial advisor is supposed to have read and understood the conditions within a prospectus, therefore offering advice around different risk profiles and different forms of investment. And Sam's point was very clear. If friends of his have great difficulty with a legal background or a financial background, have great difficulty in understanding a prospectus, how can ordinary New Zealanders? They simply can't. That is why the financial services sector is a very important part of the New Zealand economy, and it is why we need people who are suitably qualified to be operating in this sector, and we need to get rid of people, or we have got rid of people now, who have no qualifications and who have no intention of getting qualifications. We talk about financial literacy. It is a problem, and my personal view, it's not the party's view necessarily, my personal view is that some form of economics and finance should actually be compulsory up to the fifth form. New Zealanders need to be able to leave school understanding the basics of economics and accounting and finance. It's not difficult, but it needs to be part of the prospectus. And I wonder what Alan Peachy's view on that is. I suspect he probably feels the same, because coming out of school not understanding a thing about economics or finance is a huge barrier to this country going forward. It's a huge barrier, Mr. Speaker, and it's something that needs to be addressed, but like I mentioned, it's outside the ambit of this bill, and it's something that the parties will have to work through. Another point, Mr. Speaker, is that New Zealand quite simply can't afford to have the millions of dollars that has been shed from the balance sheets disappear. Raising capital is vital to the depth and the breadth of business in New Zealand, and we absolutely must have a financial services sector that people can operate in, can invest in, raise money from, with certainty and with confidence. It is very, very important. And I would say that our capital markets have actually taken a huge hit as a result of 30-plus finance companies going under. A huge hit. A, because people now have an inherent distrust of the capital markets, and B, because people are going back to investing in houses. And we understand this is a major problem. It is not part of the productive economy. But you've been ripped off by, not you, Mr. Speaker, New Zealanders have had money gouged out of their accounts by finance companies. So where do they turn? A lot of Kiwis, a lot of conservative Kiwis will go back to the housing sector. And this is not something that we really want to encourage. We really need to encourage an environment where people believe they can invest in and assessing the risk, but can invest in with a level of certainty that the advice they have been given is not negligent or incompetent. And finally, Mr. Speaker, it's ordinary New Zealanders. I talked about Mark Hodgson's $30 million mansion. Now, I want to give you a quote on this. This is out of the Herald. A half-finished $30 million mansion is big enough to contain 13 average houses just on its floor space. 13 average houses. It will contain 7 bedrooms, a 25-metre swimming pool, and a garage for 12 cars. Its study, games room and home theatre alone are as big as the typical house, without counting any of its living spaces, including 7 bedrooms. Now, Mr. Speaker, this house is built on the graveyard of broken promises and shattered dreams of ordinary New Zealanders. There are thousands of New Zealanders out there who have lost everything. And Mark Hodgson's mansion on Paratoa Drive stands as a symbol of greed and all that was wrong with the finance company sector. And as I also mentioned, Mr. Speaker, I'm hoping that New Zealand icons like Colin Meads and Richard Long, well, obviously their brands are irrevocably damaged at the moment, but other New Zealand icons will think twice before they lend their names to areas where they have no competency in. Mr. Speaker, this travesty of the finance companies has resulted in increased ill health and a decrease in the well-being of a huge cohort of New Zealanders. Last year, I spoke about at least 2 people that we know about, and no doubt there are a hell of a lot more, who have actually committed suicide as a result of losing all their money in these schemes. This is why this bill is so important, Mr. Speaker. Now, we must remember that not all who acted in an unscrupulous manner were those operating out of the back of a tin shed. And I said that we need to pass this bill. I commend it to the House. The days of the Wild West are gone. This is a bill that closes a lot of these loopholes down. It is a fantastic bill, supported by both sides of the House, and certainly supported by me. Thank you.